Dr. Follow-up segment tonight. As you may know, President Obama wants to throw money at the southern border problem. He's asking Congress for nearly $4 billion taxpayer dollars to do a variety of things.
The president assured the American people the border was secure, but clearly it is not. I can tell you this, though. We're not giving the president a blank check.
All right, joining us from Denver, Linda Chavez, Fox News contributor, who worked in the Reagan and Bush, the elder administrations. From Washington, Republican Congressman Steve King. Congressman King, you say you're not going to vote to approve any funding for the kids down on the border?
I'm not going to vote to approve $3.7 billion for the president to hire more lawyers and to squander it in the way that he has designed. There's nothing in this that actually secures the border. And until we stop the bleeding at the border, Bill, we're not going to solve this problem.
All right, but what about the kids? What about the kids now? We got 60,000 of them. Some of them need help. You know, shouldn't Congress allocate some emergency funding for the children?
You know, I would look at that in that fashion, but when I look at the president's appropriation, that isn't really where this thing needs to go. I just want to insist that the president secure the border, and I've concluded in the last few days he has no intention to do so. We've got 2.5 years of this going on. We've got to stop the bleeding. This topic can come up about how to take care of the kids after we do the emergency situation.
Yeah, well, he has to move the National Guard down there, and I said last night I think he is.
I agree.
But we'll see. Linda, how do you see it?
Well, first of all, I want those kids to be able to get back home to Honduras and Guatemala and El Salvador, where they're coming from. It cannot happen unless Congress appropriates some money so that we have enough judges in the immigration system to hear the cases, to adjudicate them. We have a law that says these kids must be processed within 72 hours. They then are either put into a detention center, or if they have relatives, they're released to those relatives. But they eventually have to go home. And if you want those kids to go home, you're going to have to appropriate the money to make that happen.
Well, what about that, Congressman? The money that would be appropriated, almost $4 billion, some of it would be used to deport the children, and you say?
Well, I just don't accept that as a reason that we have all these kids massed on our border. The president has let them in. He's essentially invited them in. He can do interdepartmental transfers, intradepartmental transfers. He can find the money. Right now, 70% of our Border Patrol is being used to warm bottles and change diapers. So until the president shows the will, and by the way, all the president needs to do is call the president of each of these 3 countries and say, there's a Mill Air going to arrive on your airport. It's going to have, say, 250 of these kids on it. Be on the tarmac to welcome them, or we're going to shut off your foreign aid. And I'll turn that foreign aid into these kids, and I'd be very glad to do that. And I think Linda might agree with that.
I'm very interested to hear that the congressman thinks that the president should violate the law on this. The law is very clear. We have a human trafficking law that says that those kids have to be handled a certain way. Now, I'm in favor of changing that law. I don't think that law was intended to deal with the kind of crisis we have now.
There's 4,000 children that come under that law.
Linda?
Absolutely. But we have to change the law.
All right, go ahead,
I introduced that bill into the record night before last to change the law. I don't want to try to move it in the House because when we send it to the Senate, they're likely to put the Senate's Gang of 8 amnesty bill on it. So I'd call upon the Senate, take the bill I introduced, start it in the Senate, send it to the House. I'll support it. I think we should do that, and I think that's a constructive thing we can do.
All right, so you both agreed to some things, but there is a general mistrust of the president, Linda, which is not going to, and that's why the House probably will not give him the $4 billion, because they don't trust him. They think he'll take the money,
and I don't
he'll do smoke and mirror PR business, but won't solve the problem, and it's another $4 billion down the drain. I mean, that's the bottom line. The president has lost credibility, if indeed he ever had any in the House.
Well, there's no question about that. I've written tons of columns about my mistrust of President Obama, and in fact, he deserves that distrust. But the Congress can take his request. They can make changes in it as needed. It ought to be targeted at border enforcement, but it also has to be targeted at dealing humanely with these kids. Bill, you're the big champion of kids. You know, these pictures of these 6-year-olds
I agree with you.
lying on the floor,
listen, and I think
we got to take care of them.
And I don't think Congressman King would oppose if it was very targeted money for the children to get them back home eventually. All right, and then to secure the border. If those 3 elements were forefront, Congressman, you'd support the $4 billion, right?
Bill, both of you, I would like to do that. But we should conclude this president will never secure this border. It's absolutely clear to
but
me.
let's see. I mean, enough pressure comes on him.
The only thing that's going to secure the border, Congressman, is if you pass legal immigration reform.
Well, I don't believe that,
That's got nothing to do with it. We have a president that will not enforce the border.
That's a whole different thing, but I don't believe that, Linda. I think you could stabilize that situation.
Call out the National Guard.
You could stabilize that situation.
President Eisenhower did it. Let's do it again.
All right. Thanks very much.